Hey guys and girls, today we're going to work on breaking down, servicing, and reassembling a Penn International 250TW. We're going to start with the left side, and these are using Torx screws, size is a 15. We're going to remove 5 screws on the left side here. That comes off like that. That looks like it's coming up pretty easily, which is good. You have the bearing, those 2 dogs, and the springs that are around them. I think since that bearing is coming out, let's go ahead and pop it out just so we have it out. And what was I doing here? I want to remove these 2 springs by unscrewing these 2 screws here. And all we're going to do is kind of wipe these things down, because in general they look fine. We'll just wipe all this stuff down. I may end up using a little bit of steel wool. That's an old righty piece, but it still works. I have a new one here. Oh, in here there was a little bit of corrosion around these things. What I'm going to use to kind of clean these holes out will be something like a pipe cleaner, some metal piece. You can also use the plastic ones if the corrosion is not too stuck on there, but I find like the metal ones work better. I'll show you what that looks like. Take one out. It looks like that. Alright, so I've got that all cleaned up. It was pretty easy. I just kind of wiped stuff out and use a brush and Q-tips to kind of clean those areas out. I don't know if I ever showed you this, so I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you how to use the Allen Tanny's bearing filler. I don't know what you call this thing actually. But I use it to fill bearings. My favorite one is this one right here. This one's awesome, but it has size limitations, as you can see. So for larger bearings I have to use this. The way you do it is just set it inside here. I'm not sure if this attachment is the universal or the imperial or metric. But it's the only one I pretty much use. I don't use the other one that often. I don't think I've ever used it. Set in there where it's recessed into the proper groove that it should be in. Stick this on there to where it fits. And you're going to use an excessive amount of force, or as much force as you can use to press down on that as you slowly press that button or that lever. And at some point you'll see the grease start to come out. There, it just started coming out. You can see the black old grease, and you can see the new grease behind it. Now, one of the drawbacks of this is that it adds a little too much grease to these bearings, but that kind of works out over time as well. And I only grease the left side and the pinion bearing side. I don't grease the spool bearings. So I'll take a little bit of that residual grease, just kind of wipe it in this hole here, kind of like that. Now I did also go ahead and use a wire brush to clean those threads to make sure there wasn't any corrosion kind of stuck in there, or to get rid of a lot of it. So we're going to do 2 things when we put the reel back together. We're going to grease these threads. I may end up oiling the holes that these threads or these screws go into. Not sure yet. Yeah, so let's get started with this stuff. We're going to go ahead and grease these springs just to light them out. And you can rub it on with your fingers also. Grease those holes there where the screws are going to go into. A little bit around these posts. And now we're going to take our first setup and drop it in there. That end of the spring needs to go on the inside, all the way inside, right there. Let's see if I can show you that better. All the way inside, not up here, but all the way down there. And I'm just going to screw that in. I'm going to hold it at an angle to kind of just get it started. Then slowly flatten it out. When I get it down a little bit, I'm going to pull that into the inside. Then screw it down. Same thing for the other one. Snug them down, and then we can pop our bearing inside there. Last step would be to put the dogs on. So we're just going to drop it over. And when we do drop it over, we kind of want to test it just to make sure it's functioning just like that. It doesn't have to go all the way up, but as long as it springs up nicely, you're in good shape. Let's go ahead and now work on the spool. I'm going to pull this shaft out first. Leave these things intact just so you can see them afterwards. This is going to get pretty messy, I think. I'm going to use a little extra leverage on these things, so I'm going to use my this screwdriver. I'm going to start loosening some things up. I need to get around here. Same sort of deal. It has 4 flathead screwdrivers or screws that are very tiny. See them right there. Now when I take this cover off, you're going to see a gasket underneath there. I can tell you that if you do not see a gasket, don't even worry about it. It's not that big. I mean, I don't want to say it's not that big of a deal. It does help seal off that drag plate, but it's not the end of the world if you don't have it there. You can always add some grease. Whatever grease you're using for the drag washers, you can use to kind of seal off that area. And I'm referring to this right here. So if I take this off and it breaks off, first of all, that wouldn't be good, but it can happen. This one came off nicely. Sometimes you try to take these things off and they're kind of stuck there, so that's why I'm saying that. I'll get that cleaned up also. Now let's go back to getting these screws loosened up. Alright, so I think we should just start with this first. There's a covering that goes over that gasket. We're going to leave this off because these are supposed to be one piece. So all we have left is just that black piece that you saw earlier. These screws are all the same size. You can see around here there's some corrosion happening. Alright, let's finish this up here. You have that washer, then you have a bearing here. That comes out, and these are the bearings that I will oil. On this side, we have to remove this cover first. I'll show you that in a sec. We have to remove this cover first to get this. There's a center gold piece that needs to be removed as well before we can remove the bearing. And these screws on each side, or this side and that side for the plate, are both the same. So up that comes, then you got to remove this piece right here to get that bearing out. It's getting messier as we go. Came out pretty easily. which is always good. And that's it for that. This is the the sleeve in the middle. Then for the pinion gear, all we have are 4 washers on here. The way they kind of set up is concave to concave. So they're looking kind of like a flying saucer, and there's a little gap when you look at them from the inside. Alright, like everything else, I'll get this cleaned up. The this drag washer looks okay. You can see it was kind of offset as it was put on there, but I don't think the glue kind of got loose. I just think it's that's kind of how it manufactured. So we may end up changing it. I'm not sure yet. We'll see how this looks afterwards. The drag washer itself, the HT100 drag itself, looks good. I'm gonna clean that off with some brake cleaner fluid, and then see how it looks afterwards. Just want to make sure that this is not slipping or something. All right, I'll see you guys in a bit. Okay, we're back. The couple points here. First thing I'm gonna do is oil these bearings so we can get that kind of working in there. And even though there might be grease inside here, adding oil to it helps break that grease down and helps it kind of just ooze out or dissipate. Second thing is, the drag washer has some concerns for me, so I'm going to go ahead and just change it out. This is the new drag washer that has the grease already added to it, so I don't need to add anything to it. But I'm also going to not put that gasket back on there. So what I am going to do is I'm going to add some oil to these holes, because we saw there was some corrosion on those screws that went in here. And the second thing I'm going to do is add some grease to around here. And this just kind of helps act as that gasket would. I'll clean that stuff off in the middle. And you don't really have to, because the back side of the plate will be going there. So just kind of a light coat just around it. And I think I'm going to keep that there because I need that for the back side anyhow. Now I'll go ahead and add some grease to these holes. Kind of like that. Grease inside here where the bearing is going to sit. And I'm going to stop because I didn't oil these bearings. Kind of got sidetracked there. Not unusual. Kind of work that in. Alright, smooth that out. Let's get this. I notice I'm doing this side with the drag first. I'm not doing the this side. That's because I'm going to use some pressure from this side, so I need this side flat, and I kind of want to just leave everything off for now. Grease the back side of this. The light coat was enough. Then we're just going to drop it on there. And then screw it in. And no, you don't need to put the bearing in yet. And all I do is just get these started. I don't snug these down yet. Snug them down, but don't over tighten them. Now we can just drop our bearing inside. Just like that. Looking good. Alright, so now we're going to take our spring. I'm going to drop this on there like that. Take this washer. Add some grease inside here. And we can add some on the back side if we wanted to now, or we can wait till afterwards. I'm just going to do it now. This is for where the dogs ride. Kind of want to make sure I get inside those grooves inside there. and then around here as well. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to drop this on like this. I'm not going to do it on the table, so you're not going to be able to see it. But I'm going to take this cover over it after I put in 2 of these screws. So let's do that first, and I'll show you what it looks like. Looking like that. Then I'm going to cover this up like this, and I'm going to push down and angle it to one of the holes. Screw that first one in, and then do the same thing for the other side. So I'll see you guys in a bit after I do that. And when you have those two screws on, you don't snug them down right away. Kind of leave them somewhat loose so you can get the other 2 screws in. Then you can snug everything down. Alright, and if that spring inside there is a little offset, you can take your screwdriver and just kind of work it over. I think you don't want to do this, or it's better to just do it when you're putting the shaft back in. Alright, so now let's get to the other side. Now I'm going to grease. That came from the bearing. I'm going to grease this side, inside here, just all these areas that I did like on the other side. Grease this up. And that's kind of how I do it, just like that. Stick some inside here. That should be good. I'm just going to drop it in, just like that. Next thing we do is stick this bearing inside. And then cover it up with this. And that sits flush just like that. And now we're going to screw this all together with the 4 remaining screws that we have. Same deal as the other side. We're not going to snug these down all yet. We're just going to get them secured. Then after we have them all in, we're going to go ahead and secure it. All you have left to do is go ahead and grease this. Now let's grease the entire surface area of this. For this part, I just kind of run it with my hands just to get it on there. And I also grease down here. Final step for here would be to grease these washers up. I'll grease 2 and then I'll show you what I was referring to earlier about how they sit, so you can see them. So the both of these are curved in right now, facing like this. I'm going to take one, flip it over, and if you look at it at an angle, you see there's a gap there. Alright, now we're going to stick these on. I'm going to have them facing each other like I said, kind of like a flying saucer. And you can always double check it to make sure it looks like that. Now we're going to stick this in. I'm going to kind of shake that around to kind of get that sleeve inside there situated properly. Stick it through, and with any luck it goes straight through. If it does not, then you need to play with that spring that's on the other end. Seems like that's what we have to do, so we'll go ahead and do that. I'm going to pull this out a little bit, find that screw and move it over. Try that spring and move it over. Oh, one final step, we'll go ahead and grease right here so we don't forget when we put the screw back together. Just a light coat around those holes for where that click tongue is going to ride. Now we're going to work on the frame, so this middle piece, but to get that, or access that, we're going to have to remove it from this side. So let's go ahead and pop this off. And then go ahead and unscrew those 3 screws first on this quadrant. And we need to do that so we can access the the other screws that are under there. Just gonna pull that out. Pull that out. Pop that off. I'm gonna pop this off. And as you can see, there's a lot of corrosion built up on those screws on the right side. There's even one that, no, that should be fine. Thought it might need to be replaced, but it doesn't. All right, so we're gonna pop this off just by unscrewing these two things here. Now we're gonna do those 4 screws first, and then these 2 nuts or 2 studs. So to do that, we're going to get our larger flathead there, and we're gonna see if they work. If they come off right away, that's awesome, which these feel kind of good already. If not, we'll work at getting them off. That one moved, and they all moved. Okay, so now we're gonna spray these things down. Let that sit for a second. Now we're just gonna work these out. Up that comes, you'll have a gasket under here. Looks to be in pretty good shape. Now we can back these up. When you do this, just be careful you don't scratch the surface or scratch the metal plate. They're kind of stuck on there. That one was. Feels like they both are. Okay. So we're gonna go ahead and add some grease. Some corrosion next to these as well. Soak them. And get them removed. All right, let's go ahead and get this put back together. Could add some grease to those holes right there. And some up here as well. Notice I'm sticking inside the holes to try to get it down deep inside there. And I guess I'll tell you that if you do this, the likelihood of these things backing up over time from vibrations and stuff of the boat are higher, not that much higher, but higher than if you use the thread lock alone and had them locked in there. But that's why you have to regularly service these reels. That's all. I added some grease right there. That kind of follows the contour of that gasket right there. And the first thing I'm going to put on would be these pieces. And the reason being is because it's easier to crank or snug them down with this when that's not on there than with it on there. So we're going to hand screw these in. Then just snug them down. You can drop this on there. Make sure the holes line up. They don't always, trust me. You gotta flip it around sometimes. These do. Stick this on. Well, before I do that, let me go ahead and add a little bit of grease to these as well. Just line it up. I'm gonna get 2 corners started. work the rest in. When I'm putting this down, what I do tend to do is do an X pattern. So I'll get these close to snug, and then I'll kind of work an X when I'm snugging them down. I'll do a fast forward through this so you'll see what I'm talking about. Alright, now we can take some oil, pour it along there and along here. Drop the clamp back over and screw that on. Now at this point, we can go ahead and grease this end up and put that left side back on. So I'm going to add some grease. To around there. I'm also going to end up greasing those screws before I put them in. Now we can take one of our lugs, drop those in. So it's set and ready to go. Let me get those screws greased up and then I'll come right back to you guys. Okay, we'll go ahead and line this up. You see a little gap right there that has to fit over the lug. So then we're just going to kind of drop it on, rotate it until it falls in place, like right there. And now we can screw these in. You can snug these down right away if you want to. Just in general, because I don't do it, I'm not going to do it here. I'm going to get them all secured first and then tighten them down. Alright, and since we're here, we can go ahead and put that spool back in. But that's already done. Just make sure your dogs are set and not raised up. Whenever you put it in, it should drop in place. And you can always do this to double check to make sure it's working properly. Alright, let's get to the right side. While I have the handle on, I'm going to loosen these screws here. It's easier to use a handle with leverage than to try to hold the main gear in your hand. Now I'm going to undo this screw here so we can take the handle off. And the knob on this one is a little stiff, so I'll show you how you can mitigate that or how you can remedy that. Now we have to undo this. Can pull that off. There's a washer there and then there's a spacer. That'll drop out on you. Now I'm going to undo those those 3 screws there. The reason you see me switching back and forth between like this or maybe this or even this depends on the amount of tension or torque that I need to add to it. So that wasn't enough based on my grip, so I had to go to this thing. That's all. Alright, so I want to do these 3 screws right here. This comes off. That comes out. Then you have a washer there. You can push this down. I don't know if I'm gonna take off this. I don't know if I'm gonna take off the clicker. I mean, I guess I will. So I take most things off anyhow. So we have that washer that was under there. That's the thicker one, or the thicker gap. And to get this off, we're simply going to undo that nut that's over it. Comes up like that. Push that out. You have one washer, that's more like a lock washer. Then you have a set washer, let's call that one, that has a little prong on the end of it. This is a one piece, so it doesn't come out. These do not come out either. This is a one piece mechanism, so if you got to replace it, you got to buy the entire thing. So that's it for that. You saw the bearing come out already. These two things will separate. And screw this up to get that middle piece out. Kind of like that. And this should just come up. But it seems like it might be a little stuck, so let's use this and kind of work it. Yeah, it was a little bit. And then in there you have two cam followers that look like that. We could break this down too if we wanted to. And I typically would do this with the older ones because they used an old kind of leather washer under that knob that would disintegrate over time. But if you want to do that with this one, you can certainly push back with your fingers. Sometimes it works. If it doesn't, then you can take a screwdriver, pop that up in the air like that. Take this, push back, and then slide it out. Then out comes that. Normally there's a HT100 washer on here now on these newer ones, so you don't need to do that. But just in case you did, there's one more thing to go. Finish this up. You can undo these screws here. Those screws are different, so take note of that. I mean, they're different than the lock washer screw for the handle, and also different than the screws that go into the spool. Then as it separates like that, this comes out, and you're pretty much done with that stuff. I'm not going to break this down. You can undo that screw. Pretty easy once you break that, when you take that screw out. Okay, so before I get rid of this paper or paper towel, let me show you what I would do for these stiff knobs. There's a couple things I would do, but the first thing I would do for these, since they have the screw, you can unscrew this stuff. I'm going to pop this thing off at the top, and in general this does not always work. So then if that doesn't work, then I'll go to my other step. I believe they turn in opposite directions, but because this is so stiff, and I'm pretty sure this top one turns to the right. But because it's so stiff, I'm only going to try one. In theory, what you're supposed to do is hold on to this one with a screwdriver and turn the top one. So if that starts turning, then that's what we'll do, but it's such a pain in the butt. Let's try it forward first, and then we'll try it backwards. I don't always remember this. I think it turned. Yeah, it turned. Okay. So let's unscrew this one. That's good. Now we can pull this off like that. Let's get that screw out of there. Now I'm going to use this stuff here to kind of clean that off. And if that doesn't work, then what I will end up using is something like This is 600 grit sandpaper. Could use that. That helps clean it up. And then I'm also going to use a pipe cleaner inside here. But I'm going to use a thicker one to get inside there. So I'd go something like this. Blow that out. Just clean up the inside. And then let's go ahead and brush this off. Just get rid of that greening that's around it. Or most of it. Let's see how this feels. Feels better. Looks better. Okay. Alright, so what I guess I'll do is put some grease inside here. That's the best option. And I'm also going to put grease on the bottom part as well, but I'm going to first put some Corrosion X on it, which is this. Kind of work that in. And I'll put a little bit of grease inside here. Let's clean this off. Alright, and let's stick this back together. Yeah, that feels good. Drop that in. Now remember, it came out going forward, so we're going to spin it backwards to reattach it. And I'm going to tighten as hard as I can, and I'm going to just keep a feel over here to feel if this bottom will start to turn on me. I don't think it will. I can't remember if they came off together or what, so. And there you go. Now it's no longer a stiff nut. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is, I guess, start greasing some stuff up. So in here, in those channels where those pins will ride. Inside here. You can do the outside around here. Here as well. That's kind of where the lever rides. You can also do these holes right here because screws go inside there. And the plate sits on here, so it doesn't hurt to grease that as well. Let's do this part first. I'm going to grease right there. Grease this up. Sometimes when you put this back on, it's a little loose, so if that's the case, I'll show you what to do to avoid that or to fix it. Drop it down like that. Notice that the indented side here is the one that's facing up towards us right now, so we can slip this on. I didn't grease this, so let's go ahead and get that greased. I'm greasing around where that washer is going to sit. And up there. where it goes inside that cam. Take this and just slide it over it. It should kind of be a little snug and pop on, which this one did. So it's not too loose. That's good. Next we can do the clicker. Let's stick this in just like that. We could add some grease inside here and around the top part where it's going to sit, and on the bottom where it's going to come through. Drop that in. It's going to be sitting around there somewhere. That's the general area where it'll be sitting, raised up in the air. Drop this lock washer over it first. There's a prong on the side there. It's a little indentation or notch sticking out. And I want to get it sitting down. That's what I'm looking for. And the reason being is because, let's get this greased up, is because the down position is here, not the up position. That's my fault. So it's around there somewhere. And the reason I know that is because this notch fits inside that little channel that's on the clicker. So get that writing down it, turn it to where it fits inside that hole over here, which we're good. Stick this lock washer over it, and now we can just screw it down. And when you start tightening this down, sometimes it has a tendency to slip, but because that little lock thing there is there, it doesn't usually. But you still got to keep an eye on it just in case. This was a big problem with the older ones, or the first series, like the single, the 30s, not the 30Ts or 30TWs. I'm looking for this. So let's go ahead and tighten this down. And we're going to make this snug. That should be good. Test it out. Looks and feels good. We're going to add some oil inside there. Some there. And kind of work that in. I'm going to leave that in the up position. Set that aside there. I'm going to work on getting this cam assembly back together. Alright, now let's get this cam assembly put back together. I did go ahead and shave that down slightly so it could fit better inside here. And I'm greasing every surface area on this thing. I'm greasing the threads on here. We can grease the threads on this. And also run some grease inside that channel right there. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is take this and put this in there. I'm going to push down on it like that. It might be or may not be centered. Doesn't matter. When you start turning this from the bottom, you go back and forth until you get it working properly inside. And I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom. Now we can take our bearing, which I greased, stick that inside like that, and then take our followers and just push them in the holes. Let me get a little more grease on this one. The flat side goes facing or goes towards the bearing. The rounded side is the one that stays out. And when you put grease in these things, you create a vacuum. So essentially, you'll see sometimes it'll kind of bounce out on you. Just make sure you do it a couple times to kind of let the air escape. Drop this in like this, and just line it up. These pins have to be over this dip right here. Then just push it down. looking just like that. And now before we put this in, we're going to put our thick washer in there. That goes somewhere at the bottom like that. And then these two little pins will go through those two channels that are on the side there. One there and one there. And just push it down. Now we can take our lever, add some grease to it, some to the bottom side. Take this piece, stick it on over there inside this little channel right there. Take our lever, aim it towards the free spool area. That's where it should fit, like that. For purpose of putting this back together, I'm going to move that forward slightly at first because that puts some pressure on the lever to lift it up. And I want it to kind of stay flat like that. And now I'm just going to line this up over like this, get the knob over that lever and just turn it until it sits inside the slot that it should be in, which it just did. Then we can screw this together. Alright, and that's that. Now I can pop it back to the free spool position. Now let's go ahead and grease up the handle and the main gear. Grease around the bottom side, just kind of like that, inside the hole. Top side, kind of like around there. Grease the hole from the top. And a light coat on the main gear. But like all the other pieces in here, we're going to grease the entire surface area of it. So I'll speed this part up. Alright, so let's go and get this put back together. We're going to take this piece, drop it in through the middle like that. The way it's facing is that indented part will be facing down looking like this when we put this together. And you want that little shoulder riding inside that recess right there. I don't know if you can see that recess or not. So it drops in. Put this over it. The beveled edges or beveled ends will be facing down. And like I said, these screws are different. There's one that's a little bit shorter, but it also has like a rounded bottom. That's going for the handle. The other one with the sharper, more angled bottoms will be going inside here. And I'm only kind of hand tightening with this small screwdriver for now. When I get the handle secured, then I have more leverage to use the bigger flathead to get those snug down properly. So now I'm going to stick this through here. Just like that. Don't know why I hold on to it, but I do. I wish I had a better answer for you. Take this, that sleeve, stick that on there. Stick our washer on there. Now we can put our handle on. Kind of hold it balancing like that. And I'm going to secure it with this nut or this screw, but nothing else so far. That's like a hand tighten. And I'm doing that so I can just get this, so I can have some leverage to screw these things down. Now we can certainly go ahead and snug this down so we can attach the lock washer to it. Around there should be good. This is a little bit offset, so it doesn't line up properly. Like one of those gaps doesn't necessarily line up in line with that hole there. So you kind of got to play with it a little bit, is all I'm trying to say. Alright, so at this point we can put the reels together and then lock them down. I'm going to add some grease here, just around where that lug is going to go. Some over that hole. And this is something you could have done, possibly should have done, before you put the spool in. It'd be a little bit easier, or a little neater. take our lug and drop that on there first, and now we can line this up. Make sure this reel is in the free spool position because that makes it as flat as possible. And I kind of prefer it that way because there's a little bit of pressure or tension when you put this together. When you put it together, you kind of want to line that up to where that gap is over the lug like it was on the other side. But sometimes you need to turn this handle to get the pinion and the main gear to marry. Right there. So that's the area it's in. I'm just going to take my 4 screws, put those in, then we'll work on getting this reel snug down. And when I start getting this down, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate that handle again a couple times, or a couple times in the process, just to make sure that it is not squeezing onto the pinion and marrying properly with it, which it feels like it is, so that's good. Now at this point we can certainly knock those all the way down. Because we'll never access that one again once we put the quadrant on. A little bit of grease inside here where those 2 supports go. And before I get farther, I'm going to wipe off the excess because once I put them in, I can't get to it. Those 2 spacers go in there, one there and one over here. Now we can take our quadrant. I'm going to slide that in. It's hard to show you this one, but you have to make sure that when you slide this in like that, it's level on the top. I mean, it's not dipped down or dipped up. It can't actually dip up. I think it dips down more if you put it the wrong way. That middle piece and sometimes will slope up so you can allocate for you putting this in the proper way. Now you can certainly feel it when you test the reel out. Move that lever along. If it gets tight along here somewhere, then you just did it the wrong way and you have to just flip it over. I'm going to start the middle one first, then get all these worked down. And when I'm tying this stuff down here, if you enjoyed the video, please hit the thumbs up button. If you appreciated the content, please consider subscribing to the channel because I will obviously be putting more out like this. Snug them down. And let's go ahead and test this reel out, make sure it's looking good. There's a free spool part. We got that working. There's the retrieve part. Let's see the retrieve and no drag. Pretty good. Tighten that down a little bit. And then the drag is just getting tougher. I can feel it, which is always good. The clicker. That works. Alright guys, I think that's all I gotta show you. Thanks for watching, and again, don't forget to hit the subscribe button or that like button if you're interested in stuff like this. See y'all next time.